Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
All right, welcome to episode 82 of Fathers of the Grind. We are joined yet again by our friend, our best friend, Daniel Freitas.
I really
Right,
think
Derek?
he should be on the show. I think he's a great person for the show.
Oh,
he's
Cloud,
really
come on,
great.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Sorry, Cloud's crashing the sorry. I mean, this is not a Final Fantasy episode.
I don't know who's talking.
Got it.
Cloud has literally the same voice as Daniel Freitas.
That was just me. Cloud wasn't even saying anything. He was, I don't know. I'll take
Daniel,
care of him.
when the day comes that you have children, you need to change your voices up a little bit, okay? When you're doing little, like, playtime with the kids.
Like
you
a
can't just always have your normal voice. Your kids will look at you and be like, Dad, that's not the voice.
Can I just do a Batman voice for everything? I'm Cloud.
You can. Yes.
Okay.
This is
All right.
Cloud.
You can.
This is Cloud.
All right, my name is Tim Nestor, and this is Fathers of the Grind. I'm also here with my co-host, Derek Teague.
Yeah, I would say you're better half.
That's weird.
That's
and I'm
cute.
also here with our friend Daniel Freitas, like we said before. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us again after
thank you, sir.
nerding out with us about Final Fantasy XII last time.
It is an honor and a pleasure.
You're right. It is an honor and a
Yes.
pleasure
Yes.
to be with us right
It
now.
is. It is. I don't want to do anything else with my time right now. but
I'm
be
sorry, I'm
honest.
confused. Is Cloud talking right now?
Yeah, no. I put him in timeout. Cloud's in timeout.
Oh my gosh.
All right, I just got a text from Derek that says we need to wrap this up. I want to play Destiny 2 beta. Derek,
Close
we
the
just
show.
started. We just
Yes,
started.
but everybody knows who listens that I hate Sony.
All right,
so-
PlayStation is great. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, the state of Sony. It's trash. Close the show.
And we're done. Actually, we could wrap it up by just saying they're winning by a lot, and then we could just close it.
And they're better than Microsoft. Good night.
They have
Yeah,
sold a crap
even-
ton of systems.
Even in their down years, they came back and won. So that's just the state of Sony. All right, well, that's what we're talking about this week. We're not going to jump into here's what we're playing because it's summertime. There's not a whole lot of new stuff going on. But the good news is, here in the very near future, we will be having some exciting new games coming out. But that's not the case yet. We're still kind of going through our backlog and that kind of stuff. Nothing super new to share on that front.
None
So
of us
I'm gonna
cared
skip.
about Splatoon 2.
No one really cared about Splatoon 2, unfortunately.
What Splatoon?
Not for now, at least. So we're going to skip right past what we're playing, and we're going to jump right into talking about the state of Sony. So
do
just
it.
like we did with the state of Nintendo and with the state of Microsoft, I'm going to give us a little background. Guys, feel free, as you know, whether you remember little pieces of this or whether you remember what you were learning about during these early days of PlayStation, feel free to interrupt me with, your take on it. I don't want to just talk the whole time, but there's some interesting history behind how PlayStation got started. We touched on this a little bit when we went over the state of Nintendo. That was probably 4 weeks ago or so. And how PlayStation and Nintendo, they are pretty much forever linked in terms of their consoles and how things got launched with PlayStation. It's pretty interesting stuff. But let's go back to the beginning. PlayStation was the brainchild of a Sony employee named Ken Kutaragi. He's a
So
name
it
that if you
wasn't
followed Sony,
Kaz.
it was not Kaz.
So
took
Kaz
over
is a
like
fraud.
20 years later.
Giant enemy crabs.
Kaz took over. I mean, Kaz was working for Sony, but he didn't become the CEO until
Doesn't matter.
2006 or something. He's a fraud. So anyway, Ken Kutaragi was the man. And by the way, he's still doing some consultation type stuff with Sony. And I think he also is a CEO of a new, smaller tech company. But anyway, all that being said, he was the guy who got this going. So how did this get going? Well, I read this. I was reading some stuff online about what he shared about how he went from being a Sony and mainly audio tech kind of a guy into thinking, I think video games are something worth pursuing. So in the late 80s, he was watching his daughter play a Famicom, which was the old school Nintendo, and realized the potential that existed within video games. So, but at that time, when he would go to Sony's execs, to his bosses and his bosses' bosses, they had very little interest in video games. Their real money was in audio technology and those kind of devices. CD players were about to become a big thing, and we all know that Sony was a major player in compact discs. So, but when Nintendo came knocking, and they talked to Sony, Kutaragi in particular, about helping them create this wavetable sound chip with their upcoming Super Nintendo system, which they hadn't named yet. They said, hey, we're developing a follow-up to the Famicom. We're looking for some outside vendors to help us develop our sound chip. Ken Kutaragi accepted. His bosses would not have been okay with this. So he accepted this. They didn't know what he was doing, and so he worked in secret, and he built and designed this chip called the SPC 700. And, of course, when they found out, they were furious because, again, they're saying this is a waste of money. This is just another flash in the pan. People like arcade games, and so Nintendo had this one-off hit, but this is not a thing. Please, we're not doing this. So they were really upset.
Please understand.
Please understand. But at the time, Sony's CEO's name was Norio Oga, and he was the one who helped Kutaragi push the project through, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that the whole reason that Kutaragi got into the, hey, I'm finally going to do something was because Nintendo came calling, and he did this in secret.
Well, thanks Nintendo, because now we have PlayStation. So
yeah, thank you, Nintendo. Well, really, Nintendo's to thank for a lot of that stuff, but very specifically for PlayStation, Nintendo at multiple times are the reason that PlayStation became a thing. It began with the sound chip development that began the wheels turning within Sony to move towards video games. Now, the next step is something we've already covered. I still think it's a hilarious story that Nintendo and Sony had come to this agreement to not only create the sound chip together, but they actually were going to go as far as to create this Super Famicom CD-ROM adapter that was going to add on to the Super Nintendo. It was going to play all Super Nintendo existing games and these future release CD-ROM games. It was going to be this great combo console. And famously, Nintendo, right after announcing some key stuff with Sony, like the next day, surprised Sony and the rest of the world by announcing, oh, we're going to partner with Philips. And they just left Sony by the wayside, right? They ditched them for Philips. And where's
cool.
Philips today?
Not cool,
where's
Mario.
Philips today?
Not cool,
I
Mario.
think Philips. What does Philips even make now? Headphones? I don't know what else they even make.
Daniel, we all know that Mario did not make that decision, and that Princess Peach makes all those decisions.
It was
That's
Peach.
true. That's true.
Behind every successful man
Is a dumb
is a
woman.
strong woman.
There's
Okay.
a dumb woman making dumb decisions.
A strong
there he
toadstool
is.
princess.
There he is, you guys. You were wondering, hey, where's sexist Derek? Where's racist Derek? He's here.
He's still
Don't
here.
worry.
He still
He's
hates
still here.
John Martin and women. Go ahead.
Aw, well, that's terrible.
So even while their partnership with Nintendo was growing in the late 80s and into the early 90s, gaming was still looked down upon within the Sony environment. There was a hostile atmosphere to video games, but Kutaragi continued to persuade Sony to fund his research into the CD-ROM adapter. Now, and this was even dubbed the PlayStation with a space between it, and it was going to be compatible with Super Nintendo. It was going to be really cool software and hardware partnership. Of course, when Nintendo decided to be a big fat jerk and break up with Sony and go back with Philips, that
Are we
really
talking
ticked
about businesses, or are we doing a
businesses?
daytime soap opera right now?
It was basically a soap opera because, dude, back in the day, Nintendo was being led by a president who took everything very personally. It was very like this honor system, and same thing with Sony. And literally, the president, Norio Oga of Sony, that is what pushed him over the edge. And and this is something that's well known. He was so furious that he basically forced the rest of the leadership to put their full support behind what Kutaragi was doing to complete the rival console. He famously announced basically, we're going to defeat Nintendo.
Well,
I would do the same thing.
Japanese people are very, they're very like honorable,
Passionate.
Well, they don't live in the world that we live. Well, they
No.
do now,
No.
but back then they don't live in the world of like everything's got to be a contract. It was based off loyalty and integrity.
Right. It
and
was a handshake.
yes, you would shake your hand and say, "Hey, we're gonna do this, right?" Yep, and you did it. You honored your word, and
Except Nintendo spit in their face.
you know what? I hate
Basically.
Nintendo now. I hate Nintendo now. Like,
I'm throwing my
ba-
Switch away. I'm throwing
Basically,
it away.
Throwing it away.
and I think that the cockiness of Nintendo during this time is what I honestly think has led to their struggles for the last 4 or 5 consoles, Wii notwithstanding. And even the Wii, yes, it had this huge spike in sales, but if you look at it as a console with software sales and the way it really petered out at the end, that wasn't that great. And the Wii U was kind of the culmination of all that. But I think Nintendo's pride and I think they got way overconfident, and starting with the N64, they were just in a downward spiral. And of course the Virtual Boy was a crash and burn. So, and I know this isn't the state of Nintendo, but it is interesting to see how these two companies partnered up. Sony was kind of on the brink of just saying, forget this video game thing. And Nintendo just decided, you know what? No, we're going to go with your rival, Philips, instead. And then Sony was like, oh, okay, we're going to be better than you at this. And they basically were, at least in terms of sales.
They
and success.
are. Well, they really are. They are better.
Yeah. So
I think Kutaragi is actually a time traveler. He must have known this was all going to happen. I think that's what it is.
To me, this would make a really fascinating documentary, and I'd love to.
Yeah.
I would totally watch this.
Oh, absolutely.
If someone were to go to behind the scenes and do all the interviews, and and I would love to watch this whole thing go down.
I think what they should do is like make a movie out of it and make it like a kung fu movie. So like every time one of them's like angry, that goes into a kung fu like action scene.
I like the idea of Nintendo and Sony fighting on this rainy rooftop at the end, and then Microsoft tries to join the fight, and they both just push them off the edge, and they keep fighting.
Wait, so would Microsoft be like Chuck Norris in that one Bruce Lee movie?
Yeah.
He's the American that shows up.
He's the American, right?
Yeah.
Well, like I said during the Microsoft one, though, I do think Nintendo and Microsoft are joining forces to destroy Sony. So, yeah. Maybe that will be the plot twist at the end of the movie that we're going to create.
Mm.
Possibly.
How many
I am
sequels?
looking forward to that.
How many sequels? It's a trilogy, right?
It's a trilogy.
I think we should do one and done, but okay.
No, we're going to follow in the footsteps of the Matrix.
Gotta make that money, Derek.
We'll make a great first movie, and then we'll destroy it with the 2 sequels.
There you go.
All right. So anyway, I just wanted to lay the groundwork there so we could all kind of see and be reminded of how Sony got started in this console business, and to also be reminded of how remarkable it is for a company to launch their first system and immediately dethrone the champion. I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff. The fact that
I want to say, and I joke around a lot, but I want to be serious. As you were like reading all this, I want to say that I think this was awesome that you dug this up, Tim. I've never heard this anywhere. I've heard, of course, about the Philips side of it, but I've never heard the extent of Kataragi. Who's the other dude?
Oga.
I never really knew what was going on. I just knew about Philips and Nintendo striking a deal, screwing over Sony, and then Sony just started PlayStation. So, very good job. Hats off. I'm not wearing a hat. Of pulling this out. I'm being serious. It was very, very interesting, and not many podcasts will have this, so you guys should subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe and share, you guys.
Please subscribe, share with your moms, your dads, everyone.
Shout out to Ian and Eli Vlogs. Nobody cares. Just subscribe.
They just talk about themselves. It's really boring.
Nobody cares.
Right.
Just subscribe.
Fidget spinners.
Fidget spinners. Oh boy. So yeah, it's one of those things where there's plenty of other details and there's plenty of other versions of the story that have been told, I'm sure. But it was really neat to kind of go through everything from Wikipedia, which of course is not always the most reliable, to several other sites that had grabbed this information over the years and interviews and stuff. So it's kind of cool to piece this together. We'll see. Like maybe someone who's listening has additional resources that, hey, I actually read this take on it too. That'd be cool. If you guys want, send those to us. I'd love to add on to this. But the history there is very fascinating. And now that we're looking back on 4 generations of Sony consoles, I want to talk with you guys a little bit about where we think they are. And I put on the notes here for you guys both to see what some of the sales figures were for their 4 main home consoles, for their 2 portable consoles. And then we'll talk about looking to the future a little bit. But let's just start right away with the question, what do you think is the current perception of Sony as a video game manufacturer, a video game company, outside of their other products?
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Sony is the Nintendo. What Nintendo used to be is what Sony is now. PlayStation has replaced Nintendo when people in general, and again, there are Xbox loyalists, but I'm talking about casual gamers, when they want a console, when their children want a console, and they go in a store, they're looking for a PlayStation. They're looking for the new PlayStation game. They have replaced Nintendo, and they are, to me, easily top dog. And I'm not just talking sales numbers. I just think the way they're running the PlayStation business right now, and I give Microsoft a lot of props with the changes they're making, and they're being very competitive and they're being very smart right now. But I still think PlayStation is literally nailing everything. And they even went under some new leadership and in the last couple of years, new speakers, new presenters, losing people, gaining people, and they're still rolling. It's like they finally, after the PlayStation 3's tough launch, they figured out a system. And they're like, this is what everybody wants, and we're just going to stick to it and keep doing it. And to me, they are easily the top dog when it comes to gaming consoles and exclusive software.
Do you think that perception is shared by most gamers, or is that just kind of your take on it right now?
I think it's shared by anybody with a brain, but that's just my perspective.
That's your thoughts of all your own opinions.
Anybody who's not DFC would know this is true.
I don't know who that is, but
Dirty, filthy.
Daniel, what do you
cat.
think about the
What-
current
what-
perception of Sony?
no. What's that third word, Eric? What's the third word?
I can't say Daniel Freitas.
Family-friendly
Yeah,
podcast, you guys.
exactly.
Come on.
Well,
Come on.
hey, I've kept it clean.
That Daniel
so,
Freitas character,
Yeah, there you go.
I
Daniel
swear more
Freitas,
than
yeah.
both of you combined, and I haven't said one profanity. So you're
you
welcome.
are
all right?
showing incredible
Yeah.
restraint.
It's
my
very
friend.
hard. Very
You're
hard.
doing way better than that white guy, so I appreciate you.
We're all white guys.
Yeah, but you know what?
No, I know.
In his defense, he had just come off of like a 2-hour podcast about beer, and he was drinking the entire time. So
exactly.
Yeah,
again,
we're
I'm impressed
lucky.
by the restraint he was able to show despite the amount of alcohol that was in his system.
I'll start off by asking you guys a question.
No, you're not Jesus. You don't answer with a question.
Okay. Well, I'll do whatever I want. So
Well played.
F the police, as they say.
Okay, let's go.
Who has their own conference at the end of the year amongst the three companies?
Sony.
PlayStation does.
Exactly. You know why? Because they have a lot of love, and a lot of people want to go and see what they have to offer and are excited to see the new things that they have to show. Not that they wouldn't be for Nintendo or Xbox, but I mean, let's be honest. Xbox can show a new Gears and Halo like every year, and they're not going to do that, so they can't even really have a conference. And Nintendo just doesn't think that way because they know that they just have nostalgia on their side, and that's fine because there are still great Mario games that come out, and
Well,
Donkey
I will
Kong
say, I
occasionally.
will interrupt you on that.
Yeah.
I agree with the Microsoft. Like, literally all they can do is, well, I mean, there's plenty of shows throughout the year, but E3 is the main one they can do because they're not offering a lot. I agree. Nintendo's strategy is different. They're offering a show every month. Now, maybe that doesn't interest everybody. I get it, because Nintendo is, if you don't like their first-party stuff, you're probably not going to like their consoles, whereas PlayStation, even if you didn't like their first-party stuff at all, which would make you crazy, you would still, if you're a gamer at all, be like, well, I like their third-party. I like the third-party support. So you would still be interested in their stuff and what they have to say. But Nintendo, they have a different strategy where every month, they've usually, right now, and Tim and I have talked about this, have like something launching every month. They have like a show that's about what's coming out, and then they
Nintendo
show
Directs.
and then they show a little
Yeah.
bit of what's coming out. So I do like their strategy as well, but yes, I do agree. Sony was able to do their PlayStation experience because of their popularity, and let's be honest, they just have plenty of stuff they can keep showing us. Like,
Yeah, I think
They-
what you're saying is really interesting because I think Nintendo has a community
Yeah.
of Nintendo fanboys that are
Nintendots,
Nintendo or
yeah.
die, and
They've been around the longest.
Nostalgia is very strong with Nintendo, really across fans of all consoles. Most people still have a fondness for Nintendo, even if they're not still mega fans. Microsoft really doesn't have nearly as strong of a community around the Xbox ecosystem, but when you look at PlayStation with Sony, they have, and I don't think they've always had this, but they have an incredibly strong community vibe right now. And I think PSX is a great indicator of that. The fact that, like you just said, they've essentially just gathered together to celebrate and high five and say PlayStation is the best. And they get a ton of community involvement. And I think Microsoft is trying some of that. I think putting Phil Spencer in charge was part of that that desire to build that community, because Phil Spencer is very much a gamer-friendly, front-facing exec. And so I think Microsoft's trying some of that. I think Nintendo, even though they don't really have that front-facing exec like a Phil Spencer, these Nintendo Directs are very community-friendly. The way they communicate with their Treehouse group, and the way, if you ever go into their, like on my Switch in the news feed, every once in a while I'll read the little blurbs, the little articles. They're very funny. Like, they're very clever in the way they write stuff and their directions for stuff. So Nintendo is kind of developing their own sense of personality and community, but I still think Sony's doing the best job. And I think you bringing up PSX, I didn't even think about it till just now. It's a sign that Sony might have, of the three major players, the strongest community in terms of their player base.
And I mean, imagine if Nintendo had some big, like, sort of hoopla like that at the end of the year or whenever they felt like doing it, and you know, they could sell all sorts of merchandise too, because people just eat up Nintendo merchandise, you know.
Totally.
It would be awesome. I feel like there's a disconnect. Like, yeah, the videos are great because they're like, hey, here's what we're making, and that's fine. But like, there's nowhere for people to, you know, collectively gather and be like, yeah, we love Nintendo. It's been around for so long, and they're still here, and they're still trudging. Like, they're not giving up. They're not putting their games on other consoles. They're still making their own console.
I think Nintendo, and we're making this about Nintendo a little too much, but I think Nintendo needs and I don't hate Reggie. Let me make sure I'm very clear. I don't hate Reggie. There are people that hate Reggie. But I do think, and I don't know if Reggie's hands are tied because they're such a strong Japanese company and they're very traditional, but they really...
So it's PlayStation.
Yes, but they're not as traditional. That's kind of the point I'm trying to get at.
They've loosened the belt a little bit. They've allowed the Sony guys to kind of be a little more
exactly.
real.
So with my big issue with Nintendo is they aren't letting the American leadership step out and do their own things. And again, it could be Reggie is the problem, or it could be the Japanese side of Nintendo saying, no, don't speak, you're an embarrassment. But they need like some type of personality, somebody that gets out there and really gets Nintendo fans hyped up, gets more games, starts going on NVC and stuff like that. Think about it. One of the things that I liked about, and I'm going to forget his name, but you guys will probably remember, is when I would listen to Beyond and What's-His-Face would come on,
Shuhei Yoshida?
Shuhei
Yoshida, which I was going to mention.
Yes. Yeah. Yoshida would come on there. Look, I'm sure he likes them, but I'll be honest with you. He's going on there because he knows that he is going on a popular show and that he is gaining fame, which then gives PlayStation more fame. And it's building a family. It's building, and that's what Greg Miller always was talking about. Like, we're a family, we're friends, we're best friends. That's what Sony's doing really well, is they're like, we're a community. We're listening to you. You're part of our family. We're going to go on these shows. We're going to talk to you personally. We're going to give guys who support PlayStation, we're going to give them insider information so they have interesting things to talk about on their shows to keep you listening, to keep you engaged. That's the stuff I feel like they're doing. On top of, and we haven't even hit this yet, the fact that, and I know they were a little slow, I'm not going to bash them or anything, but they were a little slow at launch. But on top of that, they're literally destroying everybody right now when we talk about exclusive titles that are really, really good. And of course, I am talking mainly about AAA. If you are an indie gamer, don't listen to me. I hate you and your indie games. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking...
But even on the indie game front, just to add on to that, even on the indie game front, Sony is right now outpacing most of the competition.
We don't care. We don't care. Look at what I'm doing right here. Look at my hand. We don't care. Oh, Get them out of here. Get the
fake
indies
news.
out of here.
Yeah, fake news.
Get them out of here.
Oh, man. You guys are cut from the same cloth.
We really are. We really are. But what I'm trying to say is they've got all these AAA games, and they are just destroying everybody. And they've created this name, and it's spread like a disease. Like I said, I know plenty of people, young kids, that only buy Xbox. And that's when they talk about gaming consoles, they'll be like, oh, is that the next Xbox? That's how they think. But the majority, in my opinion, are When's the next PlayStation coming out? Do you have this PlayStation? Do you have this PlayStation game? They're not thinking outside of that. They're thinking on that one system, and it has replaced Nintendo. And I don't think the Xbox, besides America, it did really well in America, but I'm talking worldwide, has ever gotten to the point where they were just known as
they
the
dominated
gaming
in the
console.
360 generation. They dominated in the States.
They
did.
really did.
But they got trounced in Europe and in Japan. So
They always do. Because
so-
those countries are racist. But
Daniel, tell me, based on your experience with Sony, how is the perception now changed from what it was, even as recently as the PS3 or before that? Like, do you feel like the way that gamers view Sony has changed, and why do you think that is?
Well, so with PS2, they sold crazy numbers. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, PlayStation! It really is awesome." Going from 1 to 2, and then you go into 3, and Sony walks in there all smug, like, "Yeah, we got this. Everything's fine. $600. You'll just give it to us. You'll get a second job. Everything's great."
freaking
And
ass.
at giant enemy crabs, blah blah blah, and that just blew up in their face. So over time, throughout the PS3 life cycle, they kind of stepped back from that, and they were more like, "Sorry guys, we'll fix everything. The PlayStation Store will get better, and we're gonna give you some great exclusives." And it did get better. By the end of that life cycle, the PS3 actually outsold the 360.
Yeah.
Worldwide, it did. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you go into PS4 with that mentality of like, oh, okay, so Sony's back in the upswing. They're kind of back in that positive mentality, and they care about the gamers. They don't care about all sort of that fluff.
Right.
They're doing fantastic, but I feel like there have been a couple of bumps along the way. VR hasn't sold insanely well. I think it's sold pretty well for what it is because it's new tech.
VR is
But
amazing.
it's not like blowing people's minds. Like it's not selling 50 million units like plus. Like
I don't know if there's official numbers, but I've heard over 1 million. That's the only number that I
mean,
could
that's
find.
good.
Yeah.
It's just not, I don't know. It's just not
I
insane
think they
numbers.
expected more, and the fact that I could go to Best Buy today and pick up 2 VR games that were priced at 40 plus at launch, and I got them both for a total of $24.
Yeah.
Tells you what the demand is right
Yeah.
there.
But also the PlayStation Pro. I mean, I think that was their biggest sort of screw up. Not that the system itself is bad or anything, but I mean, there are issues with it. There are some games that actually work worse in pro mode than in
Yikes.
regular mode.
I didn't know
And
Yeah,
just
that's
the way they kind of introduced that, they had that little mini conference where like it just seemed super like just kind of half-assed, and like that presentation and what's his face Cerny came out and talked more technical mumbo jumbo and bored everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like
that was
the
not a
half-step-
great presentation. We reviewed
No.
that last fall, and we didn't love it either.
Yeah.
Although I did come around a little bit on understanding, okay, I think I see why there's a Pro, just like I now see why there's an Xbox One X.
Yeah.
I agree with you. That was a bad delivery in terms of here's why you need this, at least at the outset.
I mean, speaking on that point, though, that he's making, I would say with the X1X coming out, I think the Pro was a bigger mistake than I realized it was. And I'm not saying it's a terrible console. I own it. I love it. But it isn't a true 4K machine. And no, I don't think every 1X game is going to be native 4K. I doubt most of them are going to be native 4K.
Some of
But
their
it is-
flagship ones will be though.
Yeah. All of the first party will be native 4K. I know that.
There you go.
But the issue is, what first party? But anyways, so the point I was making is they kind of put themselves in an awkward position where they released the VR and the Pro at the same time, which is, to me, a bad idea. And then on top of that, you release the Pro a year before the 1X, and the 1X is more powerful. It is going to be the superior machine, and I do think Microsoft will end up getting a lot of third parties to raise things up so they will have the definitive version of third-party games, which for people that own multiple consoles, yes, that 100% matters. But the point I'm making is I feel like they're in that awkward position where, and they're still selling good, so I'm not talking about sales here, where it's like, well, you can't release the PS5 now And I do think the PS5 will be backwards compatible. I don't think we're going to have a true
God, I hope
gen.
so.
But I think they're in that awkward position where you're like, well, yeah, there's a little bit of risk here where the One X is clearly superior. So I think they're probably gonna wait and see. But I do think overall the Pro, I think they kind of shortchanged it. They made some mistakes. They didn't have the 4K Blu-ray. They didn't have where you can really get native 4K on more than 5 games. I mean, they just don't have the power in the system to run games at high resolutions and high frames per second, which FPSs matter. Like if you could get a game
Agreed.
to run at 1800p
Yep.
and 60 frames per second compared to Daniel Freitas' regular PlayStation that runs 1080p 30 frames per second, that would matter to people. And they
Yeah.
can't do that because they literally made a small upgrade. And so I
Totally.
think it was a mistake now looking back. And again, I still love my Pro. I prefer it over my standard PS4. But I think if they would have maybe known about the One X before they started the Pro, knew what Microsoft really had in store, I don't think they would have released the Pro.
Yeah, I wonder if they just thought, okay, it's us against their next one, which is the S, which is just a very small improvement on the way the Xbox One was running. I
Yeah.
wonder if that was kind of the length, the depth of their knowledge on what was coming next. But
Can I add one more point actually?
keep going?
So
Yeah, I guess.
thank you. My concern, and I mean I get it because visuals are nice when and they're flashy and 4K and blah blah blah. But my concern is Sony is doing really well, like a lot better than Microsoft. Microsoft is doing good too, but
It's almost 2
Sony,
to 1.
yeah,
I would say
most
they probably have
projections.
25 million more consoles out.
Yeah.
At least
So-
25 million more.
Yeah.
one of the
fair.
issues is getting stagnant, just being top dog, kind of like with Madden. Nobody else makes Madden games, so people say Madden doesn't evolve faster than it should because they have no competition. And then also if that trend continues where it's like, well, everything is fine and we're doing great and let's just focus on visuals, these consoles, they're not going to evolve to anything that's actually new and substantial. Like, I want more power in these systems so these games can be more complex, not so they can look better. Like, I want to be able to do more interesting things in games, not have bigger maps that have less in them and look pretty. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't
Yeah,
think
I
we're
agree.
going to get that. You got to remember these, and I'm talking about the Pro and the One X. These are not new generations. These are just
Right.
little upgrades. So power is the focus, and they are trying to push 4K sales.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. Well, Sony of course has a hand in it because they sell Sony 4K TVs, but they want to push the 4K market. So that's the point of these. I think once we do get that official, this is the PlayStation 5. Yes, it is backwards compatible and everything. All your accessories from your PS4 work on the PS. Blah 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 blah. It's going to be more powerful, but I do think they are going to then. Tim and I were talking about this earlier. I was complaining about the VR again. I was like, well, I hooked it up and started playing it, and now I remember why I had it in a box for 9 months. It's just like it's a very frustrating system because, and I'm not bashing it. Anybody who listens to me knows I'm pretty fair. I'll run my mouth for humor, but I'm fair. And with the VR, my biggest issues are not only the 80 million wires and knocking stuff over every 5 seconds, but visually, it's not a place that I want to be. Like, I put the headset on, I'm like, everything's ugly. Like, everything looks like
For now.
PlayStation. Yeah, but that's my point. I think when you see the PS5, you're going to then see the PSVR 2. And that is where you're going to start seeing more exclusive games with different style of content, because it's not going to just be prettier when it comes to VR. They're going to figure out ways to make VR work better as far as less wires, more comfortable, allow you to play games sitting down a little bit more with a controller, but you're going to be still more really immersed with that VR headset that's running 1080p, that type of stuff. Like, I think you're going to see that, which is going to allow developers to make crazy good games that are going to change the way we play games. But that's way down the line. I think right now Sony overall is doing a good job. I understand, the whole, well, they're top dog, I do. If you looked at their E3, it really was just a remaster of the previous year. That is kind of, if you were to get nervous, I'm not nervous for them, but if you were kind of getting nervous, like, man, are they becoming arrogant pricks again? That E3 to me was pretty bland and boring. As far as, I'm not saying I didn't have fun with the show. I'm saying as far as bringing something new to the table, they literally brought nothing new to the table. It was very bland, and it was very like, well, we're already winning by like. I mean, they should have at least brought Charlie Sheen out and been like, winning.
I don't think they should do that ever. I don't think anyone should do that.
They should totally bring out Charlie Sheen.
I don't know. I don't like this whole mentality of just like the visuals are more important. I think the visuals will
We've
just...
got a Colin Moriarty in here.
Well, no, I just think the visuals will on their own gradually get better, and that's fine because that's just how, technology gets better and it allows for better visuals. But I feel like they're not really focusing on having enough like CPU power and RAM so you can have multiple things happen in the game to make it more complex and do things that are more close to real life. You know what I mean?
Well, and to your point, Daniel, because I agree with you. I think, although I have been blown away with the upgrade to a 4K TV, even with my standard PS4 and Xbox One, I've noticed the difference. It's been really cool to watch movies on there and to play games on there, even without a true 4K whatever, the native experience. That being said, I agree with what you're saying because I feel like if Sony could take the next step in improving my experience on their console. So if I fire up the console and it loads in half the time or even a fourth of the time, and I can switch between games on the fly, and I can maybe put multiple games in suspend, and it can handle these kind of operations, and it can download stuff at incredible speeds. If it starts to function, because I use that system for a lot more than just playing a game. I'm bouncing around from app to app, and I'm looking through their store, or I'm looking through my friends list, or updating stuff. And as I'm doing that, a lot of times I have to sit and wait while something processes. If Sony can take that next step and say, hey, listen, with the next wave of consoles, we're going to hit true 4K and those kind of things. But what we're going to do with our current system is we're going to make the experience so seamless. And I don't know how they would do this, if they could if it's as simple as a firmware update or if it would take, PS4 Pro 2 or whatever. But I'd love for them to be able to make that whole experience seamless. As I'm going through the menus, as I'm jumping from game to game, make game load times slower overall, make it so games can load up a lot quicker. I don't care if the resolution stays the same, but my experience going from moment to moment and the game loading up, if they can speed that up, I will be very, very happy. That would be an incredibly user-friendly, gamer-friendly thing to do.
Yeah. And again, more complexity in games. Like, imagine playing a game where, like, I don't know, you're playing a character and you're walking down the street. You can literally follow one NPC through, like, their entire day. Like, say they get mugged in an alley and then, like, they walk home and they're, like, sobbing to their wife and you can, like, hear it through the window. And then they go to the police station, they file a police report, and you can follow them and watch them do all of those just random dumb things because the AI allows for that. Like...
So
that would be cool.
What Daniel wants is Stalker the game. That's
yes, exactly.
Got it.
Like I want more I want like an open world GTA where like each character has their own personality and like they have their own lives. Like
As
I know that sounds
to
insane.
Generating when you're in vicinity, then that thing kind of generates automatically. You're saying that character is like functioning within that game world. Yeah. Interesting.
And I know that requires like an insane amount of power. Like I know that's probably not going to even be possible with PS5 and whatever the next Xbox is. But like, just I want them to at least kind of start thinking in that direction to allow for that kind of thing,
Or they could go super dark when you cause a major accident in GTA, and then like a few days later, you see a funeral procession for the person you killed in that accident.
Yeah, you see, now you're thinking out of the box.
Well, what I was going to say, and this is what I was talking about. I think they already are thinking that way. I think that stuff's already being designed.
It's not getting there faster enough, Derek. I want faster.
That's because you still want to pay $400 for your consoles. Us PC guys, we're already there. But it's true. I don't
want to change drivers, Derek. That's
for a PC that is going to destroy any of those consoles. But I paid $1,700. You guys are paying $400 or $500 for your consoles. It's gonna be a while because they're gonna have to wait for those parts to drop, before they can start doing that stuff. But yes, I do think that stuff's already being thought out. But
Yeah.
that what you were talking about, you're talking PlayStation 27. I mean, that's gonna
But
be-
again, it's just
Maybe.
more the mentality. I want
Maybe.
them to start thinking more that than
Dude, look
visual.
just 2 generations ago at PS2 and what the PS4 can do now. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
saying that we'll always see that kind of exponential growth, but if they come anywhere close to it, then the stuff that Daniel's describing and that kind of creating an actual functioning world in this video game is, well, I don't think we're that far from it, because games like Assassin's Creed and GTA, they're getting pretty close already.
Yeah.
And so that's an
Again.
interesting thought. In addition to the visuals, of course, and the resolution, those things will always be upgrading and improving.
Yeah.
But
I like that
what you're saying.
trend. Yeah, I like that
so
trend.
one of the things I wanted to point out too is the fact that, I mean, Sony's had success with sales with all except for one piece of hardware. So the original PlayStation, the total tally count that I could find online is over 100 million. I found a few different versions, but the one I landed on was 102.5 million total sales. That does include when they re-released, I guess it was called the PS1?
I
or
think it was
PSX?
actually spelt out the word 1, yeah.
Okay. So when they re-released that thing, that includes those numbers, but that console sold over 100 million. PlayStation 2 is the second highest selling hardware, video game hardware of any kind, second only to the DS and only by a few million, at 155 million sold. Only the Nintendo DS outsold it, and I think that one's in the 157 range, so not that far ahead. The PSP, mostly thanks to homebrew, to people who broke this thing open and turned it into their emulation station. The PlayStation Portable sold 82 million worldwide. I don't know that it was that successful in terms of
well, the Vita
just
shows
selling on its
you
own for people to
that
kind
the
of just play PSP.
was kind of like a Wii anomaly.
Yeah, but it also people bought it literally like millions and millions and millions of units moved because of the homebrew capabilities. People learned how to break that thing right
Well,
away.
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying look at the portable numbers, and then they are like, well, let's create a Vita that's more
Yeah.
powerful. That will sell 70 or 80 million. And
Well, it was really
we'll get
popular in Japan because they love mobile gaming over there.
Right.
So
It was very popular over there, but again, homebrew was a big reason for that. And the
Yeah.
Vita, a stronger system, a really sleek system. It feels good to play. It's really well designed. It's a beautiful little piece of hardware.
Well,
only
L2,
sold
R2,
13
screw
million.
you.
So the Vita did not sell that well. We skipped the PS3. Well, it's got a big hit of thunder. Hopefully I don't lose power.
Yeah.
The
That was
PlayStation
just my
3.
stomach groaning.
PlayStation 3, I found a whole bunch of different sources on this. I found some that said 83.8 million sold. I found some that said 86 or 85.8, and there's a bunch of different numbers I found, most of them placing it just a little bit ahead of the overall Xbox 360 sales. Suffice to say, it sold in the 80 millions, which is a very successful console sales total. And now we have the PS4. And I just read an article from CNBC from last month, and Sony officially said they have passed the 60 million sold mark. Not shipped, sold mark. And of course,
Huzzah.
we know that it's still climbing. That number is still growing. And that's PS4 Pro and standard PS4 combined, although the standard makes up the vast majority of
Yeah.
those sales. So I wanted to paint that picture for you guys, and now as for your prediction, we got to close out here in just a few minutes, but I just want to ask you to make a prediction. Where do you think the final PS4 sales count will land when it's all said and done? PS4 has been discontinued.
what was PS2's again?
PS2 is 155 million. Just for some context, at this point, so I'm trying to see if I can do the same point in its life cycle. The PS2 was around 71 million, and Sony is projecting. Don't know if they'll hit it. They've backed off their projections a bit. They're projecting that by that point in the PS4 life cycle, which will be March of next year, they'll hit 78. So they're projecting to outpace the PS2. Right now, they're currently outpacing it. But the PS2 had a huge resurgence when they dropped the price down to like 129. So the PS2 had a very it was a very unorthodox boost in sales because of a price drop and a redesign. So,
I don't think the PS4 is going to reach PS2 numbers.
Okay.
No.
Because they're not. I don't think they're going to let the PS4 be their main thing for 10 years like the PS2 was.
Right.
So I think that they're going to close out this generation sooner than they did with that generation. And at that point, PS5 or whatever it is will, then pick up steam and the numbers will start to diminish for PS4. I think it'll probably be their second best.
You think it'll be in the so over 100 million then?
I would say they could definitely hit that, yeah, but I don't think it's going to reach 150.
Okay.
I think it's going to be 110.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I think I'm leaning more towards pretty much a tie with the PS1. I think it'll just barely crack 100 million. I think it's going to be in that 102, 105 range.
When it gets down to like 200, 250, and I'm talking about new consoles, not used. I think that's when you're gonna get those like beyond dirty, filthy, casual gamers that are just gonna be like, oh, I'll go pick up that new PS4
I'll pick
that
it up.
came
It's
out
down.
8
It's under
years
$200
ago.
now. I'll grab one of those.
Yeah, it came out 8 years ago. It was brand new.
Bunch of dopes.
I do think there will be some sort of PS4 Slim type of a system that'll release. That'll be much cheaper. It'll run quieter. And
I will say
yeah,
this:
that'll be a
PlayStation
few years
3
away, though.
sales were helped by having a Blu-ray player. I
Yep,
know
the Blu-ray player,
several
that's true.
people that did not buy that console to play games. They bought it because they're like, oh, it's a cheap Blu-ray.
It was the cheapest Blu-ray player on the market, no doubt about it. All right, let me ask you this then, kind of another prediction question. Do you think Sony will dive back into handheld gaming after the success of the PSP, but I don't think it was because they did a great job marketing it. I think it's because they put out a cool little portable system that could play all sorts of emulators. And then the Vita, which was, if you're calling the Wii U a failure, I would also call the Vita a failure then. So will they get back into handheld gaming? And just give me a quick take on what it would take for them to have success if they did.
Go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, all right. I think they would have to make it like a Switch. They'd have to actually follow through with what the Vita was supposed to be and have it be something that accompanies the PS5. Well, they should wait until the PS5 and have something that coincides with that and is seamless and works alongside it very well.
And
because that's what the Vita was supposed to be. But the Vita was stuck in this weird in-between place, and it didn't work out as well as it should have.
Do you think with the horsepower that the PS5 will probably have, do you think that their handheld experience will have to be limited when you're away from your system?
I think they can allow for them to play those games and then maybe just down-res them or something. I don't know. I guess I don't know.
I'll tell you right now, and I'm not saying this is going to happen right away, but this is why we should be pushing for an all-digital future. Because if we can get rid of discs, because you're not putting PS5 and PS6 games on cartridges. If you can get rid of discs, then you can buy digital copies of these games. And I do think, and I agree with Daniel, I do think the PS5 is going to have a Switch-type capability that is going to be way better than what the Vita was to the PS4, and it's going to be a tablet that can probably do 1080p, and it's going to have all the controller functions, all of that.
L2R2.
Yes.
Will it be a separate system from the new console?
Well, that's why I said I want an all-digital future, because I think that's what they want. They want to be able to go buy it once, and you'll be able to play it at home, and you'll be able to play it on this. Because they can't do cartridges like Nintendo. I don't think they can. And I don't think they want to run the risk of doing discs on the go. So if there's another format out there that I'm just not educated on, I don't really see what they could do except for going digital to try to get you to have both.
I do think Sony will get back into handheld gaming, but not in the way we think. I don't think they'll try to copy the Switch, although that would be kind of cool to see if you guys are right. I'd be interested to see what Sony creates there. I actually think they will develop their own line of phones, and they'll get into mobile gaming in addition to their major console stuff. I think that will be their version of handheld
They had a
stuff.
phone, though.
Well, I think they'll Apple style. They'll be like that every year or two. They'll release the new Sony phone, and it will be a fully functioning phone, of course, a fully functioning smartphone. It will have exclusive games that only come out on that phone. That will be Sony games. And they'll be handheld versions, but they'll be phone versions instead of Vita.
100% say that is not what I want. I would rather have like a Switch-type tablet.
I would too. As you guys described it, I thought I would love that. I hope they do that. I'm not sure that they will, because then that would either require them to make their main PS5 box more expensive because they have to pack that in, or now they're trying to push two different pieces of hardware, and then it becomes a confusing message. We have a handheld, but it also works as a off-screen thing. Like it didn't work with Vita, so they'd have to really play that smart. I don't know what that would look like.
Flash memory is super cheap now, though, and I think that's why Nintendo was able to do the games that they can. Like, I almost feel like going off of discs and back to that sort of thing might be on the upswing. I don't know. I don't know the specifics, but
Yeah, remains to be seen. Let me ask you guys one last thing. What's the worst thing that Sony could do next? And then we'll close out after this. What's the very worst thing that Sony could do in the position they're in currently? Derek, let's start with you this time.
I think Daniel hit on it earlier. I think the worst thing he can do is to become arrogant and not push forward, not stay aggressive. Because one of the things that I do respect and appreciate about the PlayStation is that they are extremely aggressive. And I don't know if I shared this on the show or I did this on Facebook, but one of the things, I've always been a Xbox gamer. I just prefer it. America first. Make America great again.
Oh my gosh.
But I've always been an Xbox gamer, but and I play all of them, so I'm really not an Xbox gamer, but I preferred their consoles. But I always had to own a PlayStation. And the main reason was, I remember I had bought the PS3, and then I sold it because I was kind of going through where I was like trying to get rid of all my games. I sold my Xbox, everything. And then I eventually decided to buy games back after I took like a year off, and I had to have a PS3 back. And the reason why is not just because I had to own everything. It was because they had released Uncharted, Infamous. I mean, they had loaded up on games. And at this time, when I had bought it, they had released Uncharted, and then Uncharted 2 had just come out. Infamous was out. They had a whole slew of games, and I just could not wait to play it. And that's what Sony has to continue to do, and what they cannot stop doing, and that is continue to push first-party AAA games. Do not get... my biggest fear would be them getting to the point where they think they can just sell consoles with third-party deals.
I'm back.
Hey, I would be extremely worried if they felt like their future was, well, we can still keep doing first party, but we don't have to push it as much as we would. We don't have to take as much risk. We don't have to produce as many games because we're just going to get all these deals with Call of Duty, Madden, blah blah blah. And I really hope they don't go down that path.
So like an arrogance and not really pushing the needle in terms of the way that they
settling
have
for third party. And I get it. Third party has led to a lot of sales. Let's not lie to ourselves, but I just hope they don't get lethargic like that.
All right. Well, my thought on what the worst thing is that they could do, I have a couple different thoughts here, but I'll narrow it down to just one, because I want to provide a list. Here's all the bad things they could do. I would say that the worst thing they could do right now, really in the next couple of years, is try to introduce, and this is the same thing I said with Microsoft, and I'll say it with Sony, introduce another iteration on their current system. Unless it is a price drop and a slimmer, like sexier version, that's fine. But if you're trying to iterate yet again and create PS4 Pro or whatever, like if it's another slight improvement, I think that's the worst thing they could do this generation. I'm okay with you improving the way the hardware looks, and now all your PS4s and PS4 Pros are a little bit sleeker and slimmer and run better. That's fine. I'm not saying don't improve the console if there's a new version like that. I would, maybe a slim version or something, I would just say, do not create yet another iteration. And I would say the same thing to Xbox. Like I said, I'm understanding a little more and more why the X exists. I just think that should be it. I don't think they should continue to roll out every year or two another slight improvement on their console.
I'm fine with it if it's called PlayStation Pro-er.
Pro-er.
Yeah.
What about Xbox something XXX? Just keep adding X's. Yeah.
What if they call it
I think they should just call it X gonna give it to you.
Yeah, X gonna give it to you.
What if they just named it the PlayStation, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Xbox? Like they just threw all the names in there.
They really
the
should
whole
just
thing.
do that.
Mix it together. Daniel, what's the worst thing that Sony could do right now in the position they're in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll revert back to what I said earlier, just staying stagnant. I want them to try to keep being creative and thinking of new things in this generation. I don't want it to just be,
He wants Wonder Book 2.
Dude,
I was just going to say Wonder Book 2.
Clearly,
Beat me to
Daniel
it.
wants Wonder Book 2. That's
Yeah,
Dude,
that's all
I'll
you want is
I'll
Wonder Book
platinum
2.
the crap out of that game. I don't even care. But yeah, no, I want them
Yeah.
to just keep being creative and like, I mean, I can't wait for The Last of Us 2. I know that it's
Yeah.
gonna probably be a lot similar to the first one, but I don't even care. That story is amazing. So
Yeah. Well,
Gameplay
I
is
think
fun,
it
too.
probably will be similar, but who knows, man? I mean, Naughty
Yeah.
Dog, they are good at what they do. Who knows what
very
they've got
good.
up their sleeve? So,
That's one of the things, and we can end on this, that I really appreciate about them, is they go and I actually was going to say this earlier and I forgot. I think somebody was talking, probably boring the shit out of me. But
really, you're gonna make me edit something at the very end of the show? You're the worst, man.
what a
But-
jerk! Get him out of here!
Get him out of here.
That white supremacist, get him. I love him. Trump loves white supremacists. No,
Daniel,
but-
you've been holding it in for 2 hours. Do you need to say a word that I need to edit out here? I got to do it for Derek anyway.
No, I'm good. I'm fine.
Okay,
Wow.
so what
What
I
an
was
adult.
trying to say until I was rudely interrupted is that I have no idea. Now I freaking forgot. What was I talking about?
That's what you get. That's what you get. Karma's a. There, you can censor that.
I had a great point I was going to say earlier. Thanks.
You know what? I have this weird satisfaction that Derek's going to end this podcast frustrated because he had a thought. And as soon as we sign off, he's going to text both of us and be like, this is what I was going to say.
Cue
great.
Eli coming in naked. I'm pissed off right now. Eli, come on.
I want to
in
play
here.
Destiny 2. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for taking time to talk about Sony. And you, the listeners, we want to hear what you think. What's the perception of Sony right now? What are some of the best and worst things they could do next? And are you a Sony pony? That's really the question when it comes down to it. Are you
Yes.
a pony like Derek
Yes.
and Daniel are?
Clearly, I'm a pony.
Although Derek calls me a pony bot, he says I'm a Sony, and which doesn't make any sense.
You're a
Can't
pony
be, you
bot.
got to be one or the other.
No.
Hey, do you guys want to ask Cloud his opinion? Or?
Yeah, I'd love to hear his
Yeah,
same
Cloud, tell
voice
us what's
as Daniel.
Cloud. What is the best thing Sony could do moving forward? Cloud Strife.
I think they need to release more Final Fantasies.
Oh my gosh, man, Cloud has had
the-
a rough past few years.
This is the
He's really
worst.
drunk. He's
Cloud's
really drunk.
become
Cloud,
a,
settle
Cloud's
down.
become a
The
raging
worst.
alcoholic
Cloud
and a heavy
slash
smoker.
Batman
He
voice
spent
ever.
way too much gill at the bar. I told him to settle down. I'm
Cloud's
sorry.
been drinking. Cloud's in AA. All right. Listen, guys, thanks again. Appreciate you all listening. Appreciate you supporting the show. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?